I never believed in haunted places. Never until I set foot in Dogpatch, USA. It was supposed to be a simple adventure. An abandoned theme park tucked deep in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas. I had seen the photos online, read the Urban Explorer forums, and laughed at the dramatic stories people told. It's just an old cartoon park, I told myself. Nothing more. But as I drove up the winding mountain road, I noticed the trees growing unnaturally close together, their shadows long and twisted in the late afternoon sun. My headlights caught the edge of a broken sign, Dogpatch USA. The paint had peeled decades ago, leaving letters that looked like jagged teeth. The gate hung crookedly, chains dangling and swaying as though someone, or something, had just walked through. I paused. There was a smell in the air. Damp. Musty. A rotten sweetness I couldn't place. And then I heard it. The faintest creak of wood, just a whisper like the park itself was sighing. I told myself it was the wind. But as I stepped through the gate I realized. Dogpatch wasn't empty. Not really. Back in 1968, Dogpatch USA was a world brought to life. Based on Al Cap's comic strip Lil Abner, it promised families laughter, adventure, and a little taste of hillbilly charm. I imagine the children running across wooden bridges, their parents holding hands, eating fried chicken and cornbread, and snapping pictures in front of cartoonish cabins. I could almost hear it, the squeal of rides, the slapstick shows, the exaggerated laughter that echoed through the Ozarks. I crouched near the first cabin, brushing away fallen leaves, and it was easy to picture the dream. But the dream had rotted. The laughter had curdled. By the 1980s, the park was failing. Attendance dropped. Rides broke. The comic strip had lost its charm. By 1993, Dogpatch closed. And the moment the gates shut, the joy didn't just leave. Something darker moved in. Something that thrived on what remained. I wandered between the cabins, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The wood creaked under my weight. Roofs sagged, boards splintered. Paint flaked off the walls in gray, dusty shards. Every corner smelled of mold and decay. And then I saw them, the statues. Lil Abner, Daisy Mae, Mammy Yakum. Their painted eyes stared at me. At first, I told myself it was the angle of the light. But as I walked, I felt it. That prickling sensation is crawling up my spine. Their eyes, they were following me. Every step I took, every turn of my head, I could feel their gaze. Some explorers online had described it. It felt like someone was watching us the whole time. I laughed to myself at the stories, until I glanced back at a cracked statue of Lil Abner, and noticed his head had shifted slightly, just enough to make me freeze. I wasn't alone here. I made my way toward the old trout farm. Once it had been a place of fun. Families cast lines and kids squealed when they caught fish. Now it was a swamp of weeds and stagnant water, the smell thick and sour. My flashlight reflected off broken boards and moss-covered stones. The watermill still stood, but it was a skeleton. Its wheel is frozen, moss creeping over every stone. I imagined the children spinning past it, laughing, and suddenly felt an emptiness in the air, a hollowness that seemed to mock me. Then I heard it. A faint sound carried by the wind, or maybe the decay itself. Laughter. Not cheerful. Not human. Low, drawn-out, hollow. It came from the woods surrounding the park. I froze, my heart hammering. At first, I thought it was an animal. Maybe some stray dog. But the sound didn't match anything I knew. It was laughter, but wrong. Stretched, broken, echoing off the trees like it had a life of its own. I whispered to myself, "It's just the wind." But it got closer. I could hear it in pulses as if walking beside me, circling me, following me. I turned, flashlight swinging, but there was nothing. Except shadows. Tall, thin figures between the trees. They didn't walk. They glided, always darker than the night around them. And every time I looked away, I caught them moving, just beyond the corner of my eye. Always there. Always waiting. I crouched behind an old concession stand, heart pounding. My flashlight caught movement in the corner of the trout farm. A shadow stood still. Tall. Thin. Motionless. I blinked. It vanished. I ran. The laughter followed me. Low, long, not human. It seemed to echo inside my skull. My own footsteps sounded hollow, blending with the distorted giggles. I couldn't escape the feeling that Dogpatch itself was alive, that is remembered, that it had been waiting for me. Some explorers whispered the truth. Dogpatch USA is haunted because of what it was. It wasn't just a park. It was joy made flesh. And when it died, the laughter twisted. The shadows I saw weren't human. They were echoes, remnants of happiness turned malevolent. Hungry. Starved for attention. They waited for intruders like me to relive the past. I felt it in every splintered board, every rotting cabin, every cracked statue. The park had become a stage for something darker than cartoons or humans. I remember reading about a young explorer in 2016. He went in with friends, cameras ready. At first, it was fun. Filming abandoned cabins, documenting graffiti, laughing at the absurdity of a dead cartoon world. Then he heard it, laughter. Clothes echoing, surrounding him. A tall, thin shadow emerged. They ran. The footage caught something unexplainable, a long, hollow laugh. Not human. Not alive. And the explorer never returned. I understood him now. I stopped near the old carousel, horses frozen mid-gallop. Their faces were chipped, eyes blank, but they stared through me. Somewhere in the distance, a shadow moved. The laughter echoed again, bouncing off the broken walls. Dogpatch USA wasn't a park anymore. It wasn't even dead. It was a graveyard. A place where joy became hunger. Where cartoons became watchers. Where the echoes of fun turned into something else entirely. And I was trapped inside its memory. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, flashlight trembling. The shadows lingered at the edge of the woods. The laughter rose and fell like waves. Every instinct screamed for me to run. I did. I never looked back. But sometimes, when the wind blows just right through the trees, I hear it again, the hollow giggle, the long shadow, the eyes that never leave you. Dogpatch USA isn't just a failed theme park. It's a stage for something forgotten. Something alive. So if you ever find yourself in the Ozark Mountains and hear laughter where no one should be, remember Dogpatch. And don't look too long into the trees. Because the shadows might already be looking back. Imagine this. You're standing in front of a huge iron gate. The paint is chipped and the rust has eaten deep into the metal. Above it hangs a sign that once promised fun and joy. Six Flags New Orleans. The letters don't shine anymore. Some hang crooked, clinging to the frame like broken teeth in a dead man's grin. Beyond the gate, weeds crawl through shattered pavement. The air is too still, too heavy. And then you hear it. A faint creak. Metal straining just once as if a ride is moving. But no ride should move here. Not anymore. Because this place has been dead for years. Welcome to Six Flags New Orleans. I had heard the legends for years. Stories whispered in bars, told around campfires, traded between thrill seekers online. Stories about a park that had drowned, rotted, and never let go of what it once held. Some said it was cursed ground. Others said the floodwaters never really left. A few swore the rides themselves still carried the laughter, the screams, the music, twisted into something else. Curiosity has always been my weakness. That's why, on a heavy Louisiana evening, with the sky bruised purple and the air sticky with the weight of a storm that might never come, I decided to see it for myself. The gate loomed in front of me. I slipped through a gap in the fencing, my boots crunching on gravel and broken glass. My flashlight beam cut through the dark. Every step I took, I expected someone, or something, to tell me I wasn't welcome. But there was nothing, only silence. The kind of silence that feels alive. The first thing I saw was the Ferris wheel. It loomed over the skyline like a skeleton. Rusted metal, empty seats dangling on twisted chains. My light caught the edges of it, the shape rising into the sky, dark against the last streaks of sunset. For a second I thought one of the seats moved. Just a sway, a gentle push, as though someone had kicked their feet against it. But there was no wind. I told myself it was my eyes. My mind is filling in the blanks. Places like this have a way of tricking you, of making you hear what isn't there, see what you shouldn't. I moved deeper in. The roller coasters were next. Their wooden frames stood like broken ribs of some dead beast. Orange and brown rust stained their bones. The track curved off into the shadows, going nowhere. The merry-go-round came after. I stopped in front of it, frozen. The horses stood there, paint peeled from their faces, their plastic eyes staring into nothing. Their mouths were frozen mid-whinny, but in the dark, it looked like they were screaming. The air was thick, the kind of heavy silence that pressed down on you until you couldn't breathe. That was when I heard it. A sound so faint I thought I imagined it. Music. Carousel music. Drifting on the wind, warped and broken, like a record left out in the sun. But the speakers here had been dead for years. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened here. The stories weren't just about ghosts. They were about tragedy. This place wasn't always Six Flags. Back in 2000, it had opened as Jazzland. A park filled with laughter, rides, and music. Families came here, children dragged their parents from one roller coaster to the next, smiles wide as the sky. It was alive. Then Six Flags bought it. More rides came. Bigger dreams. More screams of joy. For a moment this place was golden. And then came 2005. Hurricane Katrina. The storm tore the city apart. The water rose and it didn't stop. It climbed higher and higher until this place was gone. The Ferris wheel stood in a drowning sea. The coasters rusted beneath the waves. The floodwaters didn't leave for weeks. By the time they did, the park was already dead. Machines ruined. Walls collapsed. But the thing that haunted me wasn't just the death of the rides. It was the stories of what was lost in those waters. Some claimed people had been trapped here, swept under before they could escape. Some claimed spirits had clung to the rides, refusing to let go. The gates closed. The laughter stopped. But something stayed. And standing there, I felt it. I moved through the park slowly. My flashlight beam caught strange shapes. A toppled clown sign, its painted grin cracked down the middle. Tilted food stands with faded lettering still clinging to the wood. A half-buried popcorn machine, weeds curling through its glass. That's when I saw the clown. The huge face that once greeted guests, its colors long gone, paint peeled away. The teeth were jagged, the eyes hollow. And then, it moved. I swear to you its mouth twitched. Just a little. Enough for me to stumble back, my heart hammering against my ribs. I froze, staring, waiting. It didn't move again. But something else did. Splashing. At first, it was faint, like a fish breaking the surface of water. Then louder. Heavy. Something moving through water that wasn't there. The floods had dried long ago. The ground was cracked and dusty. But the sound was real. It circled me. Splashes to my left, then behind me, then in front. Invisible waves rolling through dry land. I ran. By the time I stopped, I was standing under the Ferris wheel again. I told myself it was just my head. Just stories making me hear what wasn't real. But then the creaking started. Long, slow. Metal shifting under weight. I shone my light up and that's when I saw it. A shape. Small. Sitting in one of the seats. A child. At least it looked like a child. Thin arms. A pale face. My light flickered. When it steadied, the seat was empty. The creaking stopped. And the silence returned, heavier than before. They say silence is safe. But here, silence is the loudest sound of all. Every step I took echoed. Every breath sounded like thunder in my ears. The stillness pressed against me like a weight. And in that silence I understood. This park remembers. The rides hold the laughter, the screams, the music. Not as they were, but as shadows. The Ferris wheel remembers the thrill. The merry-go-round remembers the music. The clown faces remind us of the joy. But joy doesn't stay joy when it rots. It twists. It becomes something darker. And in Six Flags New Orleans it lingers. I left before the night grew deeper. But as I walked back through the gates, I looked over my shoulder one last time. The Ferris wheel stood against the sky, unmoving. The clown face grinned its broken grin. The horses stared with their peeling eyes. Nothing followed me. But even now when I close my eyes I still hear it. That faint carousel music. Playing in the dark. Six Flags New Orleans was built for joy. But when the waters came, the joy drowned. What's left is a skeleton of fun. A place where rust grows over broken dreams and shadows feed on memories. Some still sneak inside. Some chase proof of ghosts. Some chase adventure. Most leave shaken. Because once you step inside you realize something. The silence isn't empty. It's full. Full of screams. Full of laughter. Full of everything this place ever held. So if you ever find yourself standing at those gates, looking up at that broken sign, ask yourself this. When you walk beneath the Ferris wheel, when the silence presses in, when you hear a faint scream carried on the wind, are you really alone in Six Flags New Orleans? I should warn you before I begin. What I'm about to tell you is not just another ghost story. It's not a tale meant to give you harmless chills and then let you sleep peacefully at night. No, this one sticks to you. It follows you. I know because I've been there. They call it Lake Shawnee Amusement Park, tucked away in West Virginia, hidden beneath layers of rust, silence, and shadow. On the surface, it looks like any other abandoned carnival. Rotting rides, broken swings, weeds splitting the pavement. But I'll never forget the feeling that settled over me the first time I stepped through those gates. It wasn't just decay I felt. It was anger. It was grief. It was something alive, waiting. People say the land is cursed, and I thought curses were just old stories, until the night I walked into that park and discovered the truth for myself. Let me take you there. I arrived just before sunset. The light was fading, throwing long shadows across the Ferris wheel that towered above everything like a skeleton frozen in time. The air was strangely still. No birds. No crickets. Not even the wind seemed brave enough to cross this place. I pushed through the broken gate, the metal groaning as though it hadn't been touched in years, and I swear the moment my foot touched the cracked pavement inside, the air thickened. It pressed down on me heavy, suffocating. And then I saw it. The swings. They stood crooked and rusted, chains dangling, seats swaying ever so slightly, even though the air was dead still. My stomach turned cold. Because I knew the story. Everyone in town knew the story of the little girl in pink. But I'll get to her soon. I spun around, my heart slamming against my ribs, but no one was there. Only empty rides and weeds stretching toward the Ferris wheel. I told myself it was in my head. Just nerves. Just the stories getting to me. But as the shadows grew longer, the air seemed colder, and I realized I wasn't alone. I walked deeper into the park, past the crumbling ticket booth, past the broken-down rides. The Ferris wheel loomed above me, its seats swaying gently as though invisible riders were enjoying the view. I stared up, and for a split second, I swear, I saw a shape sitting in one of the cars. A small figure. A child. Watching me. I blinked and it was gone. That's when I remembered what the ghost hunters always said, you don't see them unless they want you to. And that night they wanted me to. In the 1990s, archaeologists dug into this place. They found what locals had whispered about all along, graves. Dozens of Native American graves. Many of them children. The amusement park had been built on a burial ground. And as I walked, I could feel it. The ground beneath my boots felt soft in some places, as though it wasn't meant to be disturbed. I kept glancing down, half expecting to see a hand reaching out of the soil. And maybe that's exactly what I saw. As I passed near the lake, I caught sight of something pale sticking out of the earth. My breath caught. For a moment, it looked like fingers clawing upward through the dirt. I froze. My throat tightened, and when I blinked, it was gone. But the nausea stayed. A heaviness settled in my chest, and I knew I wasn't welcome here. The deeper into the park I went, the louder the whispers grew. At first it sounded like the wind, but the words began to shape themselves. Faint. Murmured, leave. I stopped. The hairs on my neck bristled. The whispers grew stronger, overlapping. Children laughing, then crying, then screaming. It was like all the tragedies of the park were replaying themselves at once, echoing in the air around me. And then I saw her. The girl in pink. She stood by the swings, her dress bright even in the dim light, her hair curled neatly, her hands clutching the rusty chains. She looked solid. Real. Alive. Hello. I whispered before I could stop myself. She turned her head slowly toward me. Her eyes were dark, too dark. And then she smiled. My stomach dropped. Because that smile wasn't human. It stretched too wide, too wrong. And then she vanished. The swing moved on its own, rocking back and forth. I hurried toward the lake, thinking maybe I could shake the vision, but that was worse. The water rippled though nothing touched it. A low gurgle bubbled up from beneath, as though the lake itself was breathing. And then, faintly, I saw faces in the water. Children's faces. Their mouths opening and closing as if screaming silently from beneath the surface. I stumbled back, my shoes slipping on the wet ground, and when I looked up, I wasn't alone anymore. Figures stood at the tree line, dozens of them. Dark silhouettes watching me. I couldn't see their faces, but I felt their anger. The Shawnee. The ones who died here. The ones whose graves had been disturbed. They didn't move. They didn't need to. Their presence alone sent ice flooding through my veins. And I knew then, this place wasn't abandoned. It never had been. By now the night had fully settled in. The moon hung low, pale against the sky, casting silver light over the Ferris wheel. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud, the whispers chasing me. I didn't look back, not until I reached the broken gate. And when I finally turned, the park looked almost normal again. Empty. Silent. But I swear, I saw her one last time. The little girl in pink, standing in the middle of the park, her head tilted, her smile stretching too wide, watching me leave. And faintly, carried on the wind, I heard her giggle. That was the night I learned the truth about Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. It isn't just an abandoned fairground. It's a graveyard. A place where history and tragedy bleed together, where laughter turned to screams, where the dead never left. Some places don't forget. Some places don't forgive. And if you ever find yourself in West Virginia, tempted to step through those gates, remember what I told you. The ground remembers. The spirits wait. And if you hear a child laughing by the swings, don't turn around.